Hi.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So, 2 more minutes for starting.
I can't hear you.
What? I told 2 more minutes for starting. Is the time 8:28?
Yeah.
Let's give
Yes, it
everybody 2 minutes, yeah?
Anyway.
Everybody, I hope you can check if your mic and speakers are working. And if they're fine, then put yourself on mute. If you have to speak, then you could unmute it and then ask a question. So how did you guys find last session?
Sessions were good, Bharath, but after learning CKDA, my puzzle rating dropped. But I regained back.
Yeah, you get it.
Speed versus
You're unlearning the old method and learning the new one. So
that speed versus accuracy is very important. I accept.
yeah, it definitely works until 1000 to 1200. After that, there are many more things in play, right? But until then, to kind of get a hang of it, I think CKD definitely works. What about you, Dev? That you're applying it right now in your games?
I'm applying it, but when I'm applying it, it's going. I don't know what's happening. My rating is going down.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. Don't worry. The only thing that matters is persisting with it. Arush, what about you?
My rating kept on increasing till 997 until I did 2 mistakes using the same CKAD framework.
Really?
Yeah, and I reached 960.
Okay. All right. I think let's get started. I think if people are going to be joining, then they'll probably catch up with us. Okay. So what we're going to be doing today is opening framework. All right. So I'm just going to share the screen.
Okay, so what is the screen?
Okay. All right. So every chess game is divided into 3 parts. You have openings, which leads into what we call middle game. And that leads into what is called end game. Correct? So it's extremely important to play your opening well. Right? If you start off with a bad opening, then catching up in the middle game is going to be harder. Right? And imagine even if you do really, really well in the middle game, you would still come back into equality. So it's extremely important to play your openings well. And as your rating and your level keeps increasing, openings makes all the difference, right? So can you guys just put yourself on mute? Like if you have a question, then you can. Otherwise, there seems to be some kind of a feedback loop here. All right. Yeah, so openings makes all the difference. Very important to understand opening. And once you kind of get a hang of it, then it's actually a cakewalk. But if you do not understand it, then it might be very overwhelming for somebody. Like which way should I go? Does the opening work for me? There's so many openings, so many names, so many variations, right? So let's understand and see if there's a framework to it and which can kind of work for us. All right, so let me clear this up. Ultimately, the question that we want to answer in this session is, can I remember all the possible openings? It's never going to happen, right? Because there are millions of openings. So before the days of the internet, the way to learn opening was something called learning ECO. Right? ECO stood for Encyclopedia of Chess Openings. right? This was like a 4 or 5 volume book, used to be like really thick, huge books where every single opening would be there. And this is what we had to study in case you really wanted to know about openings and learn more about openings, right? But these days, there's an opening explorer once you go to chess.com, or if you go to chess games, there are places where you can learn about the opening, right? But if you ever start off opening thinking that you are going to be learning and trying to remember every single opening, then it's a futile task. Siddharth, I'd like you to put it on mute, and then you can unmute it later, okay, if you have a question. All right, so the answer to the question,
The host.
yes, I would like you to put it on mute. Okay, when you have a question, that time you can change it.
But sir, I'm getting muted by host.
Yes, I am the one who's putting you on mute, so leave it as such.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. Okay. So ultimately, why are we here? The reason is we want to understand openings. We want to get a conceptual framework, a way in which we can say, okay, this is how openings work. This is what we want to do, and how we can kind of get into the depth of it, right? And ultimately, one of the reasons why we kind of learn opening is we feel so foolish after we fall into an opening trap, right? That's what we want to completely avoid, right? Every now and then we fall into an opening trap, and it's like yuck, really crazy, useless feeling. And that's something that we want to totally eliminate, right? Again, my mantra for any class: remembering is easy, applying is hard. Correct? So there are certain schools in Tamil Nadu, which I've heard of. I've not seen them in person, but I've heard that they're basically given sheets of openings saying, mug this up, right? Remember it and just say, okay, this is how the openings work. Okay, who's controlling the thing? So please don't draw anything, okay? Just hold off. So trying to remember openings like that and just trying to mug it up is never going to help you. What you want to really do is to actually learn how to apply openings. That's what matters most. Okay, so let's go on. Let's do the hard stuff first, as always. So the opening framework is there to help you, right? So that's why I'm creating this. So most fundamental thing, that every single opening, whatever the name, whatever the variation, it's going to follow these basic opening principles, right? And these principles are protect, develop, control. A good opening is something which protects all your pieces, which helps you develop all your pieces, and then control the center and control the key squares, control the key diagonals. This is something that happens across every single opening. If it doesn't happen, then there's something wrong with the opening. And that won't be traditionally what we call as opening. Those are what I call monkey openings, right? Things which are absolutely crazy, which doesn't follow these rules. The other one that I tell every student of mine, especially from rank 1, rank 2 onwards, is to say that you have to follow the opening principles, which is start your game by moving the center pawn. Remember the edge rule. Don't take your pieces to the edge, right? Because there's a saying which goes like this, a knight on the rim is grim. Or I have another funny way of telling, which is like, if you take your piece to the edgy, it becomes a budgie, right? So you don't take your pieces to the edgy and make them budgie. Rather, keep them in the center. And then the most important rule, which is the F pawn rule, right? Which is you never, ever, 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 ever move the F pawn before castling. After castling, different story, but not before castling, right? So these are simple things that you follow, right? And the last one, a very simple principle, is don't move the same piece twice, right? Unless forced. Of course, if somebody is attacking your bishop and you got to move it back, there's no other question about it. But Don't voluntarily make moves where you move the bishop to bc4 and then move it again to bb5. These are things you want to avoid. These are things you want to cut down. All right? Okay. So the idea behind opening is very simple. All of openings in chess is classified into 4 parts: open, closed, semi-open, and semi-closed. So what are these 4 things, right? This is what I'm going to cover today. So remember that every single new pattern is given a name, a specific name. It differentiates itself from every other possible opening. And once you start playing in that opening, after 2 or 3 moves, there might be again a fork in the road, as in people try out different possibilities, and these are called variations. And as it goes deeper, you will have sub variations, which are called attacks and lines, right? So over a period of time, you would start building a body of knowledge around opening, where you start understanding that there are different possible openings. So what I'm going to do is take you through different possible openings and also show you where you could learn more about openings. Okay, so let's begin. So all of the story of chess begins with e4. This is the world's most commonly played move, where if you actually look at the statistics, even at master games, it's above 51% of the world plays this move. Why is that? Why is it that it plays it? Because it follows everything that we want in the opening, right? It gives us a chance to develop our piece, right? All of this is going to happen. And most importantly, the bishop comes out, correct? The second one is it controls the center. It is in the center, right? And it keeps all our pieces protected. Like it gives us the kind of opening advantage that it starts off with. Right? And that gives you a huge advantage. Now imagine that versus playing something like this, right? This is a monkey opening, right? Why would you want to move this? None of your pieces are going to come out. You're not controlling the center. You're not trying to protect any piece. So it completely fails out, right?
So that does not do anything. E3.
Exactly. So A3 doesn't do anything, right? Whereas E4 does everything. So for a long period of time, E4 was considered the most common opening, and everybody would play that, right? And the response to that was E5. Because what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So if it's good for white, then it's good for black. And it was splitting everything equal. I mean, black would control this, white would control this center, black would stay back here, and white would stay back here, right? So you would end up getting everything that you want in an opening, right? And your typical opening used to be that knight comes out, attacks this, and then black responds with it. Then you bring out the bishop, and he brings out the knight, and a lot of things happen from here. But ultimately, you do the same thing, which is you develop your pieces and you control the center. But one big problem with e4, e5 is many of the position used to be identical. Do you see that? It's so identical, right? It's almost like a a mirror image of black and white, right? And this leads...
Looks like this position is copied.
Yes, it looks like it's copied, right? So e4, e5 leads to a copied position. So initial days, it's completely all right. You can play. But as your rating goes up, as you start playing better, there is no point in playing an opening where it's the same boring stuff, right? So imagine like one day you go and eat pizza and you love it. But then your dad takes you to eat pizza every single day for the next 1 week. By the 8th day, you're like, oh my God, I'm done with pizza. But he doesn't stop. And then he takes you to eat pizza for the next 8 months. Imagine what will happen to you. Right? You would never touch pizza in your life after that. Right? So in other words, the human mind is always looking for variety. You don't want the same stuff, right? We want something different. We want different breakfast. We want different lunch. We different games to play. The same way when it comes to opening, we want to play different openings. We don't want to play the same thing again and again, right? So that's the basic idea behind it. Fine. So whenever you play e4, e5, it's what is called open games. Okay. So there's a lot of openings that start off from here and it branches out. These are all what is called open games. But one day somebody came and said, why should I play e5? I don't want to play e5. I want to play something else. Right? So they played e6, which was kind of dead against all the opening principles. Correct? And white played this and black played this, and kind of game went forward. Now, this was completely different in nature compared to what we just saw. So, Siddharth, you can now tell me, is this identical? Absolutely not, right? It's not identical. The other one was exactly like a copied image, but now it's not identical. It's completely different. So this opening had to be given a new name because it didn't look like that. It was completely different. So openings began gathering names, and there's a story behind everything. For example, yes, Siddharth?
This is really a type of opening?
Yes, this is really a type of opening.
What opening is this?
This is called the French defense.
I knew that. I thought it's French.
Yeah. So once you understand that, okay, I don't want to move e5, then think of all the possibilities. Like you could move this, but this is what?
Or you can play d5.
The black monkey opening, which is like absolutely crazy openings, right? We don't even want to move those.
They can play d5 into this candy.
So don't worry about the A and don't worry about the H. Let's think of others. So for example, what is this? This is really bad because it's a blunder. So no point playing that either. But this is fine, correct? And this is fine. So let's look at it. What are the possibilities? So we'll start with e5. e5 is open, so we don't want that. e6 is French. What about d5? d5 is called Scandinavian. Exactly. And d6 is called Peets. So it's written P-I-R-C. It's a French word, so it's pronounced Peets. Most Indians call it Pirk or Perk. Right? But that's not what it is. It's actually Peets. Right?
Peets.
And if you don't want to move the D pawn, you could move the C pawn. And this is called Caro-Can.
What?
Yeah, this is C6 and it's called Caro-Can. It proceeds like this. Right? So this is another opening. Or you could play C5, which is Sicilian.
Yeah, this.
Right? Or you could play the knight. You don't want to move any of the pawns. You move the knight. And this is called Alekhines. Or if you don't want to move this knight and you want to move this one, it's called Nimzowitsch. Right? So each one of them is basically a semi-open. So why is it called semi-open? Because when you actually play the game, you'll realize that the board is kind of in between. You know, like an open game, it looked like everything is cleared up. In a semi-open game, it's like, you know, there's some bit of pieces still remaining, lingering, and staying around. Right? So this is what the semi-open game is. Then white really got tired one day and said, like, hey, I play e4 and I get all these crazy openings. What if I don't play e4 and I want to play d4? Now d4 leads to a lot of openings like d4, d5 or d4, nf6, correct? So these are all what is called the close games. So d4, d5 typically has this. So you have d4, d5 followed by c4. Right?
So what opening?
So this is called Queen's Gambit decline. Or this alone is called Queen's Gambit. Right? It's basically like white is willing to sacrifice a pawn. Correct? So this is Queen's Gambit. And black says, I don't want to take it. Then it's called Queen's Gambit declined. Or if black says, okay, I'll take it. Then it's called Queen's Gambit accepted. So there's a name behind every opening, right? And it makes a little bit of sense. As you go along, you'll get a hang of it.
4 knight game.
4 knights is an open game. E4, E5, like this. That's 4 knights. Yeah. But right now we're talking about close games, which is more like D4, D5. Similarly, if D4 is followed by NF6, these are called Indian defenses, right? And there's a lot of Indian defenses: King's Indian, Queen's Indian, Bogo Indian, Nimzo Indian. But ultimately, it's all following the same pattern. D4 is followed by NF6. Okay? So these are the different closed openings. Now, White finally came one day and said, hey, I don't want to play D4. Neither do I want to play E4. I want to do something else. Right?
So what opening is this?
So this is called the Reti opening, or something else like C4. This is called the English opening. So these are all what is called the semi-closed openings. Okay, so where can you learn about this? So you could go to ZugZwang.in, which is the website that we maintain. And in here, there's an option to learn chess. Okay.
So where's the option?
I think it should be coming. Let's give it a minute.
What?
Okay, so what we have done in this website is to classify all the openings and give you all the details. So for example, so you go to chess here and you go to openings. Okay, so once you click on openings, you'd see all the possible openings, right? So this is E4, E5, NF3, NC6, BB5. This is Spanish.
So it's trying to learn the Philidor defense.
Right? This is Italian game. So instead of B5, bishop moves to C4. It's Italian. Yes, Siddharth?
So I want to learn this Philidor defense.
So you have to learn it in the sense like, you don't control it. So when you play E4, if your opponent plays D6, then maybe you can kind of play this. But it's good to learn about it. So let's say you want to learn Philidor. What do? You click on that and then you read about it. What is Philidor defense? And it shows you how it plays out. Right? So this is one variation of it. Okay. And
so what is Bird's Gambit?
So these are all the different variation inside of Philidor defense. Okay. So each one of them, it also tells you what is the win rate. It also gives you a game which was played with Bird's Gambit. So you want to learn about Bird's Gambit, click on this and it will show you a position with Bird's Gambit. So let's go back and follow that a little slowly, right? So E4, E5, closed, open game. NF3 is played attacking the pawn. Black decides to defend it using the pawn. That's why it's Philidor's defense. If he had chosen to move NC6, then that will be your regular king pawn opening, right? White immediately plays D4. Black takes the pawn, and this is what Bird's Gambit is, where you're willing to give up another pawn so that you can develop faster. These are things that you have to kind of, always weigh and judge, saying, what is it that I want? So every gambit in an opening is basically saying the same thing. I am willing to sacrifice a piece so that I can get a better position. Okay, now he goes on attacking. He's willing to give one more pawn. So black could actually take this pawn. But, in return, what's going to happen? White's going to end up with 3 pieces developed, and black is yet to develop a single piece. So now he finally develops, but all of a sudden, what do we have? We have an attack here. And we have an attack here as well. Right? So in this game, black decided to defend it like this. And once this was taken, he got a check. you defend it, and he made a blunder of losing this pawn. Now he saves the rook. Yeah, I mean, he could have saved it, right? He need not have moved this. Could he have done something here? What would you have done? How would you have defended this? Yes, Devdutt.
Probably NE7.
NE7. Now, if he plays NG5 after that, threatening checkmate, how would you prevent it?
So in this match, who won?
Guessing white. But that's the reason he defended with the queen, because defending with the knight actually could lead to, this f7 square being completely weak. But anyway, we're not going into the depth of the analysis. We're just looking at it as an opening. And I'm just showing you how you could learn about it, right? So let's look at more such openings. So these are all the opening games, right? And within the opening games, we have all the gambits, correct? And then we have the semi-open games, which is Sicilian, French, Caro-Kann, Peats, Modern, Scandinavian, Alekhines. Modern is E4, G6.
Okay.
Right?
Semi-open gambits.
Yes, Mukul, tell me.
So this is the bird's gambit. The semi-open one.
That's bird's defense, right? And then the semi-open gambit, and then you have close games, which is the queen's pawn, queen's gambit, Catalan, Benoni. Each one of them is basically a particular line which talks about what happens when it goes through that combination of moves. And you have gambits in closed one, and then you have semi-open.
Budapest gambit.
Budapest gambit is this.
Budapest gambit.
So D4, NF6, D5, E5. So he's just giving it away, right? That's Budapest gambit. So you want to know more about it? Click on it, right? And go deeper. Not everything is kind of updated, but you can at least get a basic idea. Then you have the semi-closed games, which is Reti, English, King's Indian attack, Bird's opening, which is starting with F4.
So what is a Reti opening?
Reti opening is white starting with NF3.
Okay.
Mukul, you have a question?
So my voice is breaking.
Why?
Okay. But do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
So what is this Grob's opening?
So you want to explore it, you go and explore. But my point is this, right? Let's go back to our framework.
Okay.
There's a lot of opening. It's not about learning more, but actually just getting an idea behind it. Like, hey, ultimately all openings are going to be one of this four. It's either going to be open, close, semi-open, or semi-close, right? But why should you learn opening? You should learn it because you basically want to kind of find something which your opponent doesn't know. Like, if you guys were to go to class tomorrow and check everybody who is like a beginner level, like rank 1, rank 2, and see what the game is, all the games would be E4, E5. Right? But what if you're the one guy who plays a different opening? When everybody's playing E4, E5, what if you start with C4? Right? When everybody's playing E4, E5, what if you respond to E4 with C5? Or what if you respond to E4 with NC6? It makes your opponent think, right? But otherwise he plays out of habit, right? So I'll leave you with this thought. So yesterday I was playing a game with a guy, with one of the students, and this is what he did, right? So he played white, I played black, I played French defense. And once I did this, he did this. It was a very unthinking move because he lost his pawn and eventually he lost
So
a lot
what
of other
opening
things.
is this?
This is a bad opening.
I don't understand what name is this.
There's no name for it. It's a bad opening. Until here, it's French. But at this point of time, playing this is completely wrong. But you know why he played that? Because he was so habituated to doing e4, e5, nf3. Right? So every game he's been playing has been the same thing. E4, e5, nf3. E4, e5, nf3. So the moment I played a different opening, he still ended up making the same move only to lose his pawn. And that's the competitive advantage you will get if you play a different opening. So what do I suggest? Take your time to go and explore the openings, learn openings, right? The more openings that you learn, you can actually bring something else to the table. When you play with a new opponent, you can actually try something different rather than playing the same e4, e5. Don't do the expected stuff, right? So I'll leave you with this thought. When you first started playing chess, you would have tried the 4-move checkmate, right? And imagine you met an opponent who didn't know the 4-move checkmate. You would have been absolutely thrilled, correct? That would have been wonderful for you to start and do the 4-move checkmate. But once you started meeting more people who knew about it, the 4-move checkmate was no longer cool. In other words, you have to do something which your opponent doesn't expect. If you're playing the expected stuff, if you're going down the beaten path, then that is not going to help you. Stand apart. You have to find something that makes you different. If you are just the part of the crowd, then for you to stand out is going to be harder. For you to play a good game is going to be harder. Openings can help you stand out. Go search for it and find one opening. And again, it's not important to just know all the names and keep spouting it out. What's more important is that you learn it to the depth of it. But today, I hope this framework has helped you understand the openings. And it will actually urge you to go explore more. Okay, I'll leave you with this thought. I hope you enjoyed the class today. I'll see you next week and I'll see you in class as well. Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.